REWRITTEN! Lars had no idea that a simple fuel trip to Earth could end up being this bad. It took less than a blink to see that Beach City was in mortal danger again. A ginormous, pink, scaly, six-legged, four-eyed, corrupted Godzilla monster was destroying everything. When whatever the crystal gems had tried failed, Lars knew that he had to step up somehow and help. Because now, all of Beach City was plunged into chaos, with everybody running and tripping and screaming and shoving without a hint of order or sense. And Lars had a ship, and a crew. So even though he didn't know what that thing was, he knew that he could help the townspeople not die while the crystal gems found out some sort of way to take it down. However, he had no idea where to start if he wanted to get an entire town to calm down enough to coordinate an evacuation. The ship was landed, though its power was still on, with the Rutile twins ready to lift off again once Lars gave the word. Fluorite and Rhodonite were jumping down from the ship as Lars and Padparacha stood up on the platform, all of them already having the plan in their minds. Lars watched the two off-color gems running through the crowd in different directions, every one of them calling out instructions, helping people who were trampled, trying to just get them all to calm down enough to be logical. "Everyone evacuate!" Rhodonite was shrieking, pulling up 3 children into her multiple arms to help a mom who couldn't carry all of them at once. "Leave everything! Go to the forest! Get out of here!" "The injured go to the ship," Fluorite rumbled, her slow voice carrying deeply despite the noise. Her large caterpillar-like form was already swiftly moving through the crowd, her job being to help the trapped people out from under the heavy rubble and carry them back and forth. A fuzzy, cotton candy pink lion, Stephen's pet of sorts, could be seen leaping through the crowd, helping Fluorite by picking up humans in his jaws and tossing them onto her back. "Everyone must leave!" little Padparacha called down next to Lars. "I foresee a great disaster approaching. Everybody must evacuate to the forest before it appears." "Everyone needs to chill!" Lars shouted, only barely heard. "Everything will be fine if you all just stop freaking out!" His stomach dropped as he watched the crystal gems attempt to restrain it, Mint Diamond, unravel herself like a ribbon, falling down into light, her 3 gems separating and molding back into their original parts. Yellow's sharp, armored figure, Blue's softer, robe-adorned one, and White's glimmering, star-speckled form. Whatever the crystal gems had tried, it hadn't worked. Uh-oh. Now the 3 monarchs were just running away with the crystal gems, reaching down into the streets and picking up human after human to shovel up onto their backs and hair, trying to carry as many people as possible to safety. Just as he was about to return to directing the crowd, his eye was caught by something else that was happening over by the monster. There was a rushing mob that was climbing the buildings, covering them like a carpet, leaping from one roof to the other, all of them following 3 blue gems. One of them looked like a lapis lazuli due to her dark azure color and wide, watery wings. But it didn't look like the crystal gem's lapis. She was wearing a dress that flapped along behind her in the wind, while their lazuli had less fancy, poofy pants and sandals. The second was small and compact, a splotching combination of red and blue, looking strangely familiar. But he was sure that he didn't know her, because she had 4 stubby legs, splayed out like a spider centaur, and sharp hawk-like water wings sprouting from her back. He was sure that he'd remember that. The third wasn't flying, but it was clear by how the gems were following behind her and her closeness to the other 2 flying ones that she was one of the ringleaders. She was tall and strong, but less in a muscular way and more in the importance that she held in her straight posture and puffed-out chest. She had knee-high white boots with a cape-like robe hung around her shoulders, every part of her in different contrasting shades of powder blue. Her hair was tied up into strange spiraling bundles on either side of her head, and she was wielding what seemed to be a zapping electric whip. The only thing that the 3 had in common was their color, and the fact that they seemed to be at the head of this mob. Lars had no idea what they were doing, and was even more confused and surprised whenever he saw them charging straight towards the monster with a battle cry, their weapons raising threateningly. The 2 flying leaders, the strange lapis and the 4-legged creepily familiar one, shot right upwards at it, slicing at its chest and torso as they approached the head. The whip-wielding one that was stuck on the ground plunged onwards with the other gems in the mob, crowding around the feet and lashing out at the monster's underbelly and paws, swarming it like ants. It was then that he realized what they were doing. Those gems were attacking the corrupted monster. They were trying to bring it down. Now, normally, that seems like a good thing, but in this situation, it very much wasn't. Because even though there were hundreds of those gems, they were nowhere near the numbers that they needed to bring the beast down. They were just too small. So instead of possibly poofing and containing the beast, they'd just be angering it further. Lars never knew much about corrupted gems. They hadn't run into any in space, so the off-colors never got around to them. But he'd understood the basics of it whenever they explained it to him before. The corrupted gems are only animalistic and wild because they're scared. They're hardly able to see or hear, they're in constant pain, they're confused and lost. So attacking them only riled them up and made them attack back, which was never a good thing, especially whenever they looked like some creature out of a King Kong movie. "Oh, crud, no!" Lars yelled, before turning back inside the ship and calling, "Guys, fly us up to those gems, we gotta stop them from spooking Godzilla into flattening all of us!" "Okay," he heard the twins reply, before the thrusters flared in a humming light, the ship shaking. Lars made sure that both he and Padparacha kept their balance as it lifted off of the ground, the landing gear retracting into the bottom, the shining ship gaining speed and height as it whooshed over the crowd, making a beeline towards the monster and the mob that was harassing it. "I foresee that 3 gems of blue will make a very stupid decision," Padparacha told him, her prediction delayed as they always were, but still trying to help. Lars nodded down at the little orange gem, saying, "Yep, I see him." They made it to them in the next few moments, hopefully not too late. "Hey, whoa, stop! You're just gonna make it flip out!" Lars yelled towards the strangely familiar 4-legged gem, who was the closest. She glanced back at him, an icy scabbard in each of her splotch-colored hands. He realized then that she was some sort of fusion. She had 2 gems, one in her eye and another right underneath it in the shape of a droplet of water. Both of the gems were so familiar that Lars was certain that he knew who she was, but he just couldn't put his finger on where he'd seen her before. Do I know you?" he began. She cut him off with a raised eyebrow, ignoring his question. "So what? You just want to stand back and do nothing?" "You can help evacuate instead of making it worse," Lars snapped. "Look, I don't know who you are, but you are not helping." The familiar 4-legged fusion rolled her eyes and told him, "I'm not going to stand down just because you're scared of getting bit. He's dangerous and manipulative. We have to get rid of him once and for all before he makes Homeworld any worse. Now is our chance!" Lars was very confused by her words. First of all gems go by she, so one addressing a corrupted gem as a he was strange. But other than that, he understood the dangerous part, but not the manipulative part. And makes Homeworld any worse? What was going on here? Did these gems know the gem that was corrupted? Lars had no idea what she meant, but he did know that she was wrong, no matter what her justification was. But he didn't have much more of a chance to convince her to stop, because he soon saw the massive, bludgeoning, 5-pointed tail of the monster sweeping towards them, forcing the familiar 4-legged fusion to zip out of the way. The Rutile twins luckily already had their hands on the controls, and dodged in a sweeping dive to avoid being hit like a baseball. Back up! Lars called, the red twins already doing so. They leveled out at a safe distance, watching the mob of gems as they hacked fruitlessly away at the shining pink scales. They didn't seem to be making a dent in the rough plating. Their weapons glanced off of the armor, only frightening it further. "We can't reason with them, we just have to keep on with the evacuation," Lars began, looking down to see Fluorite waving up at him with several bloodied humans clinging weakly to her long, segmented back. "Bring us down to Fluorite!" They did as he told them to, not quite landing, but getting low enough for Fluorite to begin passing the injured humans up to him and Padparacha, who laid them down carefully in secure spots on the ship. As they loaded them up, most of the crowd still in disarray, he saw someone rushing up to him. He thought, out of the corner of his eye, that it was Connie, Stephen's girlfriend, but after a quick glance, he could see that she was much older, an adult. She had dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes, just like Connie, but she was taller and had streaks of gray in her hair and extra lines under her eyes and around her cheekbones. She was holding a phone, looking absolutely frantic as she skidded to a stop near him, reaching to try and get his attention. Have you seen Connie?" she asked shrilly. "You know her, right?" "Yeah, I know her, but sorry, I haven't seen her." Lars glanced around quickly, but wasn't able to distinguish her out of the crowd. "Are you her mom?" he guessed. "Yes, and I can't find her," the teary mother replied, clutching the phone tightly. She sent me these texts, and I got home as fast as I could, but when I got there was a monster." She looked back up at the pummeling beast only a few blocks away, saying, "I don't know what's going on. Oh, please let her be all right." She's probably okay, wherever she is. Connie is tough," Lars promised. "Just try to get people to go to the forest. I'll look out for her." She nodded shakily, rushing away again. Worry for Connie lined up right next to worry for his parents, worry for his friends, worry for everyone in Beach City, pretty much. But he had to focus on saving as many people as possible for now. That was the one thing that he could do. When they got all the humans that Fluorite and Lion had saved, Lars told the Rutile twins to fly up again, skimming over the roofs and continuing to yell to everyone to get out as fast as possible, dropping down to help whenever they could. Maybe 10 minutes later was when a good "I told you so" could be said to the mob of attacking gems. The monster was getting so upset about the seemingly random strikes of pain inflicted into it that it seemed to finally have enough of cowering down in fear. Instead of shrinking away further, it lashed out in anger, almost instantly scattering their attempts. Its five-spiked tail slammed down onto the gems, poofing several of them and making the rest scramble to escape, sweeping up and down through the air and knocking chimneys and balconies off of the buildings around it. Its feet stomped and punched and squished everything that it could reach, forcing the mob to retreat unless if they'd like to be shattered, the front claws swiping upwards through the air to swat the curly-haired lapis and the familiar four-legged fusion away from them like flies. The worst of the outburst was the roaring, not just because it was jarring and made his ears ring, but because the sound waves were weaponized. Pink ripples were sent shocking through the air, pushing them back like a physical wall, blasting outward similar to a nuclear bomb with every skull-splitting shriek that the monster let off. Teeth snapped, horns jabbed, quills rattled, talons sliced, mouths screamed, and eventually the mob fell back. They were defeated about as easily as blowing over a house of cards. When the mob of gems ran for the hills, they left the monster even more disoriented than before. More fear, more destruction, more hopelessness. That was not the way to deal with things. And even though Lars hadn't been able to stop them, he didn't have any time to feel guilty of his failure. He just needed to keep Beach City alive, with every bit of power he held within his grasp.